Today is the second gardening tour of the 2023 gardening season, and I have so much to share with you. So I do my garden tours once a month, and what that means is that the garden changes drastically. Not only does it grow and change, but we've added to it. We added a new garden bed, we've added containers, and I've added a bunch of seedlings. So like any other garden tour that I've done, we're not just going to walk around. I have some things that I need to do. So we are going to do some pest control, and we are going to be harvesting some things that I want to use for tonight's dinner. First thing that I'm going to show you is the new container area. So these containers, I call them my barrels because they look like half barrels. They're just made out of plastic. I got them from Walmart over the past, I think, 4 years. I think they're roughly $20 to $23 each. And I love them. So we've had these around our pool area, but because we're moving, I needed to start moving them from our house to our new property. And so I have slowly been bringing them here over the past month. And you'll notice that one row is just strawberries, and the back row there are blackberries. So normally what I would do every season is plant some annuals in them, maybe some flowers, and then have it grow really beautiful around the pool area. But this year, because I knew we were moving, I thought, why not plant some perennials that I can then plant out into this property once we do the grading. And so for the time being, these plants are going to be in these containers, and I'm going to have to take really good care of them so that we can plant them out later. This bed here is that strawberry bed that I mentioned in the last garden tour that wasn't growing any strawberries. So this was the bed that I planted all strawberry crowns in, and nothing was growing. I waited roughly 6 weeks for something in this bed to grow, and it just wasn't. So I thought, why not plant all of my odds and ends that I had left over from my seedlings and utilize this bed to grow food. So I have down here in the corner, we have cauliflower. Next to it, we have some lettuce. Beside that, over here in the corner here, we have a bell pepper plant. Behind it, we have, I believe they are, if I'm not mistaken, Brussels sprouts. So on either side of the greens, we have Brussels sprouts. In the back, we have, so right here in the middle, I should say, we have some leeks, and then we have red cabbage. On either side, in the back, we have lettuce, and behind that, we have more leeks, and beside the leeks, we have chamomile. So this bed in a couple weeks is going to be even more fuller than it is today. I also wanted to give you an update on the strawberry bed that I planted all of the seedlings into. During the last video, I mentioned that they were all really burning up, and for whatever reason, they are coming back. So I don't know what happened. I really don't know why they all started to go brown when they were lush and green, but they are coming back, and they are super green again. So I think that it's just one of those perfect storm stories, and I'm just not going to understand why that happened. But I'm happy that they're all nicely growing again. And it's another barrel that I have planted a bunch of basil into. And so I came here a few days ago and I made sure to prune it. I wanted to prune it back. You'll notice that you'll see some cuts at the tops of them. And that's just because I really wanted this to bush out as opposed to grow tall, go to flower, and go to seed. Before we move on with the rest of the garden tour, I want to take a moment to do a little bit of pest control. So this garden here, as well as the garden at home, has had an abundance of cucumber beetles and squash bugs. I haven't seen this many of those two types of bugs in I've never seen this many. So to the point where I could come in and shake my trellises, and it would shake the squash and cucumber plants, and all of the bugs would fly up. Like, that's how many there were. So today what I want to do is I want to walk around with gloves, obviously, and I'm going to pick off a whole bunch of squash bugs, and I'm going to put them into this jar. This is just a jar of water and dish soap, and my understanding is that it will kill them without killing all of the other pests that we want to keep in our garden. So let's get picking those bugs off. For those of you that have never seen a squash bug, you're not sure what they look like, this is it here. They look very similar to a stink bug. You'll see them around your house as well. They don't tend to bother your garden, but these guys are the squash bugs. And so they're the ones that I'm going to be pulling off, like I said, with gloves and throwing them into that soapy water. Something I learned today is that when you are going to hand pick squash bugs off of your plants, doing it later in the day is 100 times easier. So when I did it at home, it was probably in between 7 and 8 at night, and I found it extremely easy to go in and just grab them and throw them into the jar. Whereas today, as I'm walking up to them, they almost sensed that I was going to put my hand in there to grab them, and they flew off or they moved position. It was really hard to catch them. They were super alert at this time of day. And so it is currently 2:30 in the afternoon, and so I wouldn't suggest doing it at 2:30 in the afternoon. I would wait until it gets a little bit later in the evening. It was much easier for me. Having said that, I did catch some. And so one thing I want to mention about the squash bugs is that they also have a smell to them, the same as the stink bug. The one difference is that the squash bugs have this orange color on their body. So once their wings open up, there's some orange on them, which is different than the stink bugs. Our 5-gallon bucket tomato plants seem to be loving their location. As you can see here, we have lots of tomatoes that are growing. So they are doing really well. I'm actually really liking this whole idea of growing them in the 5-gallon buckets. This one here is Blue Beauty. In the past, I have found that the Blue Beauty was really slow to get started. Here are some banana legs, and they've started. Now, once they get going, they are really prolific. Same as the Juliets, which are my favorite. And then we have the Paul Robson. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this to you during the last garden tour, but they were not my favorite tomato last year. And so I find it really interesting that the Paul Robson plant was actually the first to start building or growing tomatoes. This here is the spaghetti squash trellis, and it is growing crazy. Look at this squash in here. They are doing so well. I am so excited about what this garden is going to be producing at the end of the season. This side of the cucumber trellis is still not doing very good. You'll see that there are some flowers at the ends of them. I'm not holding my breath that they're going to continue to grow and produce fruit for me. I think that the plants are pretty damaged from the cucumber beetles, and so we'll see. Hopefully, you know, the other side of the trellis that seems to have won the battle against the cucumber beetles will grow up and produce enough to fill this trellis and make it look really beautiful. I don't know really what my problem is, but for the past 3 years, I haven't been able to grow a cucumber to save my life. Now, having said that, I would like to show you this little cucumber that's right in there. So maybe I have a little bit more life to live. Let's take a look at my peppers. And so if I just go into this bed here, I am just over the moon about the size of peppers that are growing on my plants. The space that they're in right now, or this new garden space, is basically full sun all day. So they are just loving the heat that they are getting. Now, if I span up a little bit, I want to show you what is behind. We have these beautiful sunflowers. And so I'm going to go around to the other side and show you what is going on over there. Look at how beautiful the sunflower is, that yellow. And if I go to the next one, it is a different sunflower. Now, the interesting piece about this is these sunflowers were a impulse buy. I wasn't going to grow sunflowers this year just because I didn't have the space. But when I was at the garden center, I saw this pack of 6. I bought 2 of them, and all it said was sunflowers. But look at this one. When this one starts to open up, it is going to have sunflowers on every level. So I don't even know what type of sunflowers these are, but I just think they're going to be beautiful once they all open up. One of the things that I really encourage any gardener to do is to prune. So I heavily prune my tomato plants and sometimes my squash plants, depending on how bushy they get. And so you can see here that I have pruned basically up to the start of the trellis. And the reason for that is airflow. So the more airflow you have going through the plants, the better it is for disease. It decreases the chances of your plants getting disease, which is exactly what you want. Like I mentioned, one of the things that we're going to be doing today is harvesting. So in front of me, I have a couple different zucchini plants. So we are going to harvest what is here because I want to saute them up to go with our dinner tonight. So let's see what we have. So here is one of the zucchini plants, and I can't remember exactly which this one is called, but I am going to attempt to remove this with one hand. I'm just going to give it a bit of a twist and break it off. And so look at that. It looks so good. Now, I've not grown this light green color one before, but I just love having color in the garden. Okay, on this one we have a yellow zucchini, so I'm just going to pull that. And that's a pretty good size one too. Before I move on to harvest the next thing, I want to stand back and appreciate this arch trellis that I'm growing tomatoes on. So let's take a little bit of a closer look. I'm hoping that with the sun shining so brightly today that you'll be able to see the different tomatoes that are growing in here. Hopefully it's not too blurry. I don't have my glasses on, and like I said, it is sunny. So let's just see here. Like, there's so much growing here. I am over the moon happy for what this garden is doing. And I feel like I keep saying that, but it is in abundance this year. And so one more thing I want to show you before we harvest those beets right there are the beans. I'm happy to say that this side of the bean arch trellis, where we have the Chinese red noodle beans, they are actually growing. They've, I don't know, maybe grown 3 feet since the last tour that I did. So they're actually growing up the arch trellis and doing exactly what I want them to do. So let's take a look at the other side. The other side is the yard-long beans. Now they are a little bit slower than the Chinese red noodles, but they are starting to grow as well. I was really afraid that these weren't going to produce, but it looks like they're just a little bit slower than I anticipated. All right, here is another zucchini. So it obviously has gotten away from me. I didn't realize this one is nice and big. So one of the things that I will do with these is make zucchini noodles out of them and add some pesto on top. So yummy. One of the other things that I complained a little bit about in my last garden tour was the lack of beet germination. But I don't know what has happened here. All of a sudden, this bed was covered in beets. Covered. So we're going to be pulling some of these out and we're going to roast them on the barbecue tonight. So what we're going to do with these is I will take them home, clean them up. I'll cut the roots off, cut the leaves off. I will add some of these leaves to our salad tonight. And these here will be sliced up and sauteed, or not sauteed, sprinkled with oil as well as some spices. And then we will barbecue them. They're so pretty. I wish that you could smell the aromas that I'm smelling right now where I'm standing in my garden. So this here is cilantro, and I just love the smell of it. And right below the cilantro is one of the containers that I brought from home. And in it we have lemon balm, which is giving off this beautiful aroma, lemony mint aroma, as well as the rosemary that I put in the same container. So the smells that this area of the garden is giving off is beautiful. I want to take a quick second to look at the shape of these tomatoes. So I'm probably gonna butcher the name, but Buratino is a new variety to me, and I just love the shape of them. Is the last trellis in a line of many that I want to show you. And this is my Tromboncino Rapicante squash arch trellis. So on this side I have the Rapicante, and you can see that they're actually starting to produce. Now, if I hadn't already harvested 3 zucchinis, I could have taken those 2 right there and used them exactly like zucchini. But because I already harvested 3 of them, that's plenty for tonight for dinner. So I'm gonna leave them. And then this side here is a little bit more lush and full compared to the Rapicante, and it is just a gorgeous wall of greenery. Last things I want to show you is our new garden box that we've added to the garden. So because our house hasn't been graded yet, or the property hasn't been graded, I didn't know where to plant all of my Egyptian walking onions. So if you are not growing Egyptian walking onions, then you definitely need to reach out to somebody, purchase them online, do whatever you need to do to get some and plant them in your garden. So this is a look here of what they look like. I planted these in another barrel at home. So one of the things that I did was I planted a whole bunch of these barrels, new ones this year, on my front porch around the chicken coop at my house, and I planted onions in them because I just think they look so unique looking. As I was walking around showing you the garden, I saw a ton more of the squash bugs. So I'm gonna have to come back here tonight or tomorrow night and pick them off when they are sleeping and dispose of them. So for those of you that are curious about Egyptian walking onions, I just put out a video this week on them. I also did a video last year on them. If you're not growing them, like I said, you really need to. The Egyptian walking onion is a perennial that grows every year without maintenance. And it grows little bulbs at the tops of them that you can take and plant elsewhere to start new Egyptian walking onion patches. So if you don't have a lot of garden space, but you love onions, these are the onions that you want to plant, because you can plant them wherever and keep your garden space for other things that you want to grow. So I'm going to get out of the sun. It is sweltering out here and I am a sweaty mess by now. I'm going to head home and cool off, but thank you so much for spending your time with me.